There's so much to talk about with Cult of the Lamb, but with how complex the game is, it's also pretty difficult to verbalize. So I'm going to start with the easy wins for Massive Monster's newest game. First is the music. With the varied game modes in Cult of the Lamb, music is a great way to create unique vibes in the different areas while still making the game feel cohesive. Riverboy absolutely nailed the assignment. It kicks off with a cheerful tone that I could listen to for hours while I meander through my village, feeding my cultists and sweeping up poop. As you leave your village, the score shifts to a more tense and eerie piece that perfectly encapsulates the unknown horrors that embody each room as you progress through the dungeons. It all coalesces into a nightmarish boss theme that puts you right in the thick of things, fighting for your life. This has no reason to go this hard. Oh, and by the way, because Riverboy and Massive Monster didn't put enough in this game, each boss has its own theme, each area outside your village has its own theme, and the nighttime has its own theme as well. The music is masterfully done, handcrafted for each encounter, but talking about it doesn't quite do it justice. The music does so much to make the game enjoyable, but what really shines through is what I'll refer to as Cult of the Lamb's personality. Cult of the Lamb lives up to the name. It's demonic, it's gory, it's disgusting, but any other game with the same description would not be for the faint of heart. I'm thinking of Blasphemous with its gorish hellscapes and grotesque characters, or Carrion with its disgusting goop monster and blood-splattering kills. Cult of the Lamb takes the ritual sacrifice, occasional cannibalism, and I guess poop eating, and ties it all together in a very cute package. The game teeters between carefree and demonic at all times. Let's look at the ritual sacrifice scene I've shown 3 times now. It embodies Lovecraftian horror as tentacles pull the subject into the underworld, but here we are with your cultists fist pumping like they're from the Jersey Shore. Or the fact that your cultists will sometimes come up to you and straight up ask you to make them eat poop. Like, we don't kink shame at the Groofs, but that's just unsanitary. Even the limited voice acting adds to the flavor. Taking a page from Animal Crossing, the voice acting is exclusively nonsensical mumblings, but this design decision fits really well with the characters in the world. My personal favorite are the Pilgrims, who all have a very similar speech pattern. I just love sitting here imagining the developer or voice actor that came to work and decided that was the day to record this. Seriously, if we could interview you, that'd be awesome. Alright, I've talked my head off about the things Cult of the Lamb nails on the surface. Here comes the hard part, and what I'm going to label as the Triple Crown. It's hard to categorize Cult of the Lamb. It's 1 part Animal Crossing life sim, 1 part Don't Starve survival management, and 1 part Binding of Isaac roguelike adventure. There's a lot packed into this game, and a lesser one would likely feel bogged down. I found that Cult of the Lamb handles this gaming trifecta perfectly. Each game mode is necessary in order to progress through the game, but diving into any of them is optional. If you really like the survival management portion of the game, you dive into the systems provided, such as the character traits that affect how well each cultist does certain jobs, and the items that can provide buffs to certain tasks. But if you don't want to dive into that part of the game, it's also not a problem, as your cultists will autonomously make sure that any available tasks are completed without your sage guidance. If instead you would like to go on an Animal Crossing adventure of decorating your village and collecting all the different cultists, you can focus on that. With a pretty deep cabinet of unlockables, the collectathon could last a while. And if you're looking for a roguelike or you miss Binding of Isaac, dive headfirst into the hack and slash dungeon crawler portion. Though a first pass of each zone seems shallow, it has some depth if you decide to dive in further, with harder areas and endless runs available once you've fully cleared a zone. Modified bosses and additional bosses, as well as new abilities and powers, allow the combat to feel fresh every time you return. I had a lot of fun with it, and I think that's where the game shines. It's not afraid to let you have fun. Look at the character generation. You have complete control over what each one of your cultists look like when you indoctrinate them. Look at the survival sim. You have complete and utter control of what your village looks like, what you create, the food that they eat, who eats what food, etc. And then my personal favorite, look at the hack and slash. This is a perfect example. On this run, I stacked attack speed and damage, and I turned into a blender that completely bodied this boss. The game doesn't hesitate to let you stretch the game's potential as far as it can go. And I think it's worth being said that the game lets you have the fun that you want to have rather than force you to have the fun it wants you to have. And I think that's why I never found anything tedious in the game. There are probably dozens of things to do in your village alone, not to mention the outlying areas and the dungeon crawler and the fishing and the cleaning up poop. But at no point did I feel like any of that was detracting from my time. It's a combination of the speed in which you can breeze through everything while taking time on the aspects of the game that matter most to you. It's really commendable how Massive Monster was able to cram all this stuff into the game, but not force the player to interact with all of it. Well, this is kind of embarrassing. I couldn't come up with any missteps. And maybe that's my rose-colored glasses, but this game really delivered on all fronts for me. From reports online, it's clearly not without bugs, and I've heard complaints about the difficulty scaling, but for me, I haven't experienced anything glaringly obvious, so I can't really talk on it. So, for my sake, let's just get on with the show and get to the nitpicks. The biggest nitpick I had was the lack of a management UI. In order to assign people to work on your village, you have to walk up to them and tell them, hey, go do that. But as far as I could tell, with double-digit hours in the game, mind you, there's no list or screen that shows you your cultists and the jobs assigned to them. I can understand why it doesn't exist, because they didn't want the game to kind of push this micromanagement narrative, but as a management sim junkie, it's information I would at least find interesting. If I'm a complete dingus and I'm having my very own Cuphead tutorial moment, please let me know in the comments. I guess another nitpick would be the difficulty, but even that's kind of a stretch. For me, the game hasn't been all that difficult even playing on super hard, and that's not me humble bragging, it's just a fact. I've hit zero faith once and I've died a handful of times, but I never feel like the game is particularly challenging me. Maybe that's just me. I also feel like the game didn't need difficulty levels, if I'm being honest. I feel like they only exist to complicate an already complicated balancing act that the devs had to do. They could have done without it. Okay, I think everyone knows what I'm going to say here. I'd recommend this game to literally anyone who is at all interested in it. If you've ever said, Cult of the Lamb seems kind of interesting, play it. If you ever thought, I kind of like games published by Devolver, play this one. If you ever were in a field and you're like, wow, that lamb's really cute, play the f***ing game. Seriously, we had a segment on a previous Game Groofs podcast where we discussed games that are good entries for people new to gaming. I would put this one top of the list, number 1. It's kind of like Neapolitan ice cream. It gives you a perfect blend of 3 different kinds of games, allowing you to dip your toes into all of them. And if you want to dive completely into one of them, it has the depth needed to give you a fuller experience. And if you love management sims, indie games, roguelikes, dungeon crawlers, life sims, Animal Crossing, but you wanted an actual game attached to it, play the damn game. 5 out of 5 stars. Thank you so much for watching this review and sticking around to the end. I want to give a shout out to our patrons Andre D, James B, and Jeremy R. Your support helped make this episode happen. And if you're looking for more groovy content, check out our podcast, drop a follow on our Twitch page, and subscribe to this channel. Slap that button, give us a like, and post a comment. It all helps. I'll be back soon with another review. In the meantime, good night, Groofs.